the idea that you're fighting on behalf of the oppressed is a pretty attractive proposition for a young person, even if they're not ideologically addled. That is a lot more attractive emotionally than, as you pointed out, the message of restraint, duty, and obligation, which is kind of the last thing a 13-year-old wants to hear.
Over the course of a few years and really trying to understand this question, what is driving inequality?
If you're a young person and maybe you're looking for a romantic adventure and you see inequality, it's going to grate on you emotionally, because who the hell is happy about the fact that there are disenfranchised street people? And the idea that you're fighting on behalf of the oppressed is a pretty attractive proposition for a young person, even if they're not ideologically addled, right? And it's also a reality that makes conservatives guilty when they're faced with the moral onslaught of leftist activists, because, well, inequality is a painful reality. That is a lot more attractive emotionally than, as you pointed out, the message of restraint, duty, and obligation, which is kind of the last thing a 13-year-old wants to hear when he's trying to make his adventurous way out in the world. This is a very big problem.
My views changed significantly when I spent 5 years actually working on a documentary for PBS, looking at 3 forgotten American cities: Youngstown, Ohio, Memphis, Tennessee, and Stockton, California. Over the course of a few years and really trying to understand this question, what is driving inequality? What does inequality look like? What does the phenomenon reveal about itself? And the answer was actually really my political turning point, the completion of my political education. The fundamental human experience of inequality in America, in a kind of advanced industrial country, is one that actually is a complex social story. You can even just see the social patterns, arrests, violence, etc. And you kind of start to understand, okay, money alone is not the solution. It has to be, obviously, resources, money that is, I think, earned. Look all over, and I think especially in the United States, that cultural net has really been shredded. The war on poverty, spending trillions of dollars now, has not solved it. I think, if anything, what I've observed in studying the historical record and then studying it empirically, looking at it face to face, poverty is much worse now, even though you have a higher median income. And so we have this paradox where we have actual material wealth. Poor people in the United States are richer than almost every other group globally. In many cases, it's like a hellscape, violence, addiction, mental illness, kind of shredded social net. And these aren't easy questions, and they certainly don't have easy answers.
What slice of the pie does the working class get? And certainly labor leaders and people like that who were genuine socialists in the English tradition rather than the Marxist tradition were doing what they could to be, some of them at least, to be an honest voice for the oppressed working class. And also, I think, as some intelligent leftists still continue to do, and I'm thinking about people like Russell Brand, we're also pretty good voices to fight against the dangers of corporate gigantism and regulatory capture. You announce yourself, you come out of the closet, so to speak, as a more conservative thinker, 2016 and 2017, that pretty much devastates your social community, and I presume your livelihood, at least as an NPR documentarist. Yeah. That's for sure. And so then what happens?
Well, then I kind of had to scramble, right? And it was difficult. I have a family. I'm, starting to have kids, and I'm kind of at this career crossroads where I've kind of burned all of the bridges, of the past, and then I said, all right, well, what can I do? What am I good at? What would actually excite me? What would be kind of something that I would want to pursue? And I fell into more conservative circles. I started reaching out to folks, and then, they were really welcoming me with open arms. You're not actually meaning what you say you mean. All of these things have to be lampooned. They have to be exposed. They have to be ridiculed. And that's why I think something like the Babylon Bee is successful. I think you have more comedians, actually the kind of most exciting and dynamic comedians of our time may not be conservatives, but they're certainly lampooning that kind of left-wing orthodoxy. Government agencies, universities, K-12 schools, prestige media organizations. if you understand the culture, and I think I've documented this in my reporting over the last few years, this is pure left-wing ideology. It's the kind of identity politics. It's, the Angela Davis style of activism. It's kind of the critical theory style of assessing society from Marcuse and others. This is the establishment. The world is run by, the PBS employees, the NPR employees, the New York Times employees.
Berkeley graduates.
Berkeley grads. And look, I know these folks. I have a good relationship with a lot of people in left-wing media, which is surprising to folks. But I've worked with them. They've come to visit me at my home. They've done profiles, etc. I've talked to them on the phone for stories. A lot of these folks actually agree with us. They probably don't agree with my style. They don't agree with my approach. They probably think it's a little bit barbarian, my level of aggression and assertiveness.
I had a lot of clients who had to reorganize their lives because they were being tyrannized, and they had to strategize about how to regain control of their tongue and their life. But the idea that I agree with you, but I just can't say anything, it's like, what do you mean just can't? It's like you're sacrificing your soul on a day-to-day basis. And the fact that 5% of the population who's like truly radically activist can control the whole damn show on the left.
I think that there is really, and the Supreme Court has agreed, public school teachers are state employees, and they do not have First Amendment rights in the classroom. That's established Supreme Court precedent. And the state already, in every state, sets the curriculum. They say these are the values of the state. These are the specific pedagogies that we're going to use. These are the actual lessons and materials that we'll be promoting. And so we know that we have a really absolute authority to design a curriculum that reflects the sentiments and reflects the will of the voters through their elected representatives in the legislature. My view is saying, hey, we have an absolute right, because these are kids, these are not adults, to kind of shape what is transmitted in the classroom with very clear principles. I think it's less so in the higher education space. My own preference is to say autonomy in the classroom, but we have an absolute right to reshape the bureaucracy.
As far as I can tell, given that 50% of the typical state's budget is spent on education, the leverage point is capture of the education system. And then you might ask, well, because that's 50% of all the money that's spent at the state level. Then you might ask, well, who's captured the education spending? And the answer is, well, teachers and administrators that are associated with the public education system. The research literature produced by the faculties of education in the last 50 years has had a devastating negative effect on public education in the US. Time and time again, whole word reading, learning styles, the self-esteem movement, multiple intelligences, like you name it. If the faculties of education put it forward, it was wrong scientifically and disastrous socially. First of all, that the administrator-teacher ratio wasn't absurd the way it is now, but also that the bulk of administrators and teachers broadly shared the same set of values as the public that whose children they were educating. The system has tilted insanely far to the left, and that it's no longer in sync with general public sentiment, and that the solution to that is intervention at the legislative level.
The state government controls the curriculum. The state government creates the institutions of public schools. It's like the actual curricular material, yes, it was consonant with the cultural values of the majority at the time. They also said, these are our schools. We have a Pledge of Allegiance. We do X, Y, and Z. These are the subject matters. These are the textbooks that we choose. And so we had a kind of agreement with the legislative and then the implicit cultural. But you cannot deny that these were all initially legislative creations. I mean, legislators spend a lot of their time. School boards, again, these are elected kind of mini legislatures for school districts. Every decision that they make politically, which is, again, the ultimate authority over the public schools since they were created, is a political decision.
It isn't obvious, and this is also why I was concerned more about eradicating the teacher certification hammerlock by the faculties of education, is that unless, it's very hard to legislate morality, even within a system.